I am really excited today. Welcome back to my kitchen. We are doing the most famous torta in all of Mexico. It is the torta of Cochinita Pibil. So Cochinita Pibil originated in the Yucatan peninsula. It's got all the classic Yucatan flavors of achiote and fresh citrus, and then pickled onions and habanero on the top of it. It's just a riot of flavors, but it is so incredibly satisfying that I think that's the reason that all over Mexico these days, people make the Cochinita Pibil tortas. Now, in the Cochinita Pibil in the Yucatan traditionally has been a pit-cooked pig, so whole animal, and they rub it with the achiote, that's the classic flavor of the Yucatan Peninsula, and then wrap it in banana leaves and then cook it for hours in these pits in the ground. I think it's a really great thing to do, but of course that's beyond most people in their homes. So we are going to translate that into a smaller portion. And because that pit cooking tends to be low and slow for most of the time that the pig is in there, we are going to do it in a slow cooker. So the first thing that we have to talk about here is that, and I've got the a classic 6-quart slow cooker here. And the banana leaves, to me, are essential. You could make this without it if you wanted to, but I really love the flavor of the banana leaves. And because now in most well-stocked grocery stores in the freezer section, you can find banana leaves, I say you should really search them out. Of course, almost any Mexican grocery store will give you in their freezer section as well, or sometimes in the produce section, you will find banana leaves there. So the ones that are in the freezer section usually come in 1-pound packages, so you defrost them. You can do that just at room temperature. It's not something that's really delicate, like defrosting fish or chicken or beef. So I'm going to take one of these pieces here, and these are huge leaves. It's kind of fun to see that. And I need a couple of sections that are about 2 feet long each. So I'm going to, it's a little bit unwieldy here. I'm going to say that that's a 2-foot section. It's probably a little bit more than that. And I'm going to put that into the pan or over the pan right there. And then I've got another one here that I think will be fine. If they've got any breaks in them, don't worry about that. That's not going to make any difference in the final flavor or presentation of this dish. So now I'm going to put the leaf down in to the slow cooker. One going the long way and one going the short way, like that. And now I will put these away. By the way, these can be refrozen. So if you have a package and you're only going to make a round of Cochinita Pibil, you can put them back in plastic and put them in the freezer and they will do just fine. Okay, so now we're ready to do the marinade for this, which is achiote. So if you're unfamiliar with achiote, it is the seed of a plant that it comes in a small pod. It looks a little bit like a horse chestnut pod, about that big. And when you break it open, there are all of these rusty red colored seeds on the inside. Now, those seeds have been used since time immemorial to color things, everything from makeup to food. But they also, if you use a lot of them and grind them into a mixture, they will have so much flavor, okay? So you buy a packet of it. I have worked with the annatto seeds and gotten recipes together for you in the past. I will just say it's so much work. And it's so hard to get it smooth that I really recommend getting one of the Yucatan brands that you can find at any Mexican grocery store and use that. So it says achiote on here. Annatto is the other name for that seed. And this does not come unflavored, okay? This has all kinds of other flavorings added to the achiote. It has garlic, It'll have some vinegar. It will have a host of herbs and spices in there, and it's all ground. When you go to the Yucatan Peninsula, and I really encourage you to do this and go into one of the markets down there, I mean, the regular markets that locals would go to, they will have big mounds of this stuff there. I mean, you really realize how important this is to the cuisine when you visit the Yucatan Peninsula. So I'm just going to cut this in half. We need about a half of this thing. Some people like a little bit more of this achiote flavor, but your sort of entry level will be half of a 3.5 ounce brick of this, and I'm going to just break it all up. Remember, I said this was a coloring agent, and so anything that this touches, including my fingertips, will be stained that sort of orangish color. I'm putting it in there, but man, when you smell it, because it is all those achiote seeds, that's the primary ingredient in here, that are ground, and they're ground through stone mills. When you smell this, it's the real flavor of achiote. So I put that in there. I had squeezed about a half a cup of lime juice here. Some people in the Yucatan would say it has to be sour orange juice, which is about the same acidity level, and other people would say to use a light vinegar in this. Now we have to add our salt. I'm using the very fluffy diamond crystal salt. If you're using table salt, it is 2 teaspoons of it. But for me, because this diamond crystal is so fluffy, that it takes more of it for that. And then I'm going to make this into a paste that will be the marinade for the pork. You can see that beautiful color, but you can smell the achiote, you can smell the garlic, the hints of the herbs and spices that are all in there. And when you are in the Yucatan and you go to the mills that make this, everyone's got a slightly different recipe of what they put in it, so you can find what suits your taste. Okay, next thing here, we are going to put the meat into the banana leaf lined slow cooker. Let me just drop that here. And then I will say that this is a boneless pork shoulder roast. And you could use a bone-in one. I've got a little over 3 pounds here. If I was doing a bone-in, I would go for a little over 4 pounds on that. And we'll just set that over to the side. The marinade goes over and around it. If there is netting on your pork shoulder roast, and probably there will be, take that off and let this go down all in the crevices of the pieces of meat there. Our last ingredient, well, next to the last ingredient, I will say, is going to be this onion. I've got a large white onion here, and I'm going to cut it crosswise after cutting it in half into slices that I'm going to put over the top of this. I really think this adds a nice sweetness to it. Some people would also put the Xcateq chili in here. Xcateq is the name in the Yucatan Peninsula for the what we would call like a banana pepper, but they're hot. So a hot banana pepper. And you can see the preparation is really very straightforward. Not too much to deal with, especially since you don't have to make the achiote seasoning paste. Okay, so I'm going to put all of the, or fold all of the banana leaf down and around the pork and onions there. Then I'm going to put this onto the base of the slow cooker. I'm going to turn it on. I want to cook this for 4 hours. You could do it for 6 hours if you wanted to, but I'm going to put this on for 4 hours because I know in this slow cooker it will be fork tender after about 4 hours. Put the top on it, And I will meet you back here. Oh, I forgot one thing. Excuse me, one thing. I have water to put in there. It will need a little bit of water to get started. So I'm going to just pour that in the top. Sorry about that. Pour that into the top all around here. That will create steam that will get the cooking started there. And then I am going to meet you back here when that pork is ready. Well, one thing I can tell you is that it smells so beautiful here. You get the smell of the meat cooking, of course, but the banana leaves really, really let their incredibly delicious aroma into the room as well. So let's see what we've got here. Ah, beautiful. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is sort of uncover the meat. This is kind of a braise, as we talk about here, because there's moisture all around it. And then with a pair of tongs, I'm going to carefully bring the big pieces of meat out and put them into something that I can slide into the oven to keep it warm while we're doing all the rest of the preparations here for making these beautiful and classic tortas. Okay, I think I've gotten all the meat there. So now I got to get rid of these banana leaves. They have done everything that they can do here. I think they're a little unwieldy here. I put a bowl here so that I could put them into that bowl. But we want to look at the juices after this, because the juices is where you've got all that gorgeous color and flavor. Okay, so those guys will go over here. And now I'm looking, I have about, I'm going to say a couple of cups of juice here, and it's a little bit too thin. I always suggest that you reduce this, boil it down a little bit. So I'm going to pour it into a saucepan and then put that over a flame here. And we're going to reduce that until we've got just about a cup of concentrated juices. Then that will go on top of the torta, the meat in the tortas. While we're waiting for that to come to a boil, I'm going to coarsely shred this meat. It should be completely fall apart tender here. You can easily break it up. And the one thing that I didn't say that you're going to check here, this was a fairly lean pork shoulder roast that we're working with here. So you want to look at the juices, and if there's a lot of fat at the top, I mean about that much fat, then you're going to want to ladle that off and pitch that. This doesn't really have hardly any fat on the top, so we're just going to let this reduce. So I'll meet you back here when this is reduced to about a cup. Okay. Now, while the liquid is reducing, I have an oven on at 300 degrees here to keep this warm. If you're going to leave it in there for very long, you'll want to cover it with foil so it doesn't dry out. I'm only making 3 tortas with it. This is enough meat to do 6 tortas, but I'm going to slide these guys into the oven as well to refresh, and then I will meet you back here when this has reduced and has concentrated its flavor. Okay, we've got our concentrated juices there, and I'm going to slide our buns, our teleras, over there. The meat is here. And then we're going to make the classic version of the Cochinita Pibil torta. So I'm going to show you how to make one. First thing I have to do is get the bean spread ready, because all the Mexican tortas, practically all the Mexican tortas, start with a layer of beans on the bottom. So what I have here, this is just some canned black beans, and you make them rich. You can make them rich with vegetable oil, olive oil, fresh rendered pork lard. You have lots of choices there. So I'm using a little bit of olive oil in this one today because it was just right here at hand. And then make a smooth puree out of it. But you think about this sort of like you might think of butter spread on an American sandwich. So we want this to just become smooth and unctuous. That's why we put the fat in there. There are some people who would tell you that you need to fry this after you have done the puree. For such a small amount, I usually don't. Okay, so we're ready with the bean part of it. We'll take one of our little crispy teleras here, and on the bottom of it, I'm going to spread a couple of tablespoons of this bean puree. So spoon it out and then spread it evenly over the bottom of it. If you have your home-cooked black beans, they are always going to be darker in color than the ones that you find in the can. Next thing that we'll put on here is a portion of the meat. Now, you can chop this meat if you want to more than what I am doing here. I think it's so toothsome, it's so wonderful to bite into it if you leave the pieces a bit bigger. So that's what I've got here. Next thing that we have here is, before I use this, I'm going to give it a taste here. You'll see that it's kind of thick, and I've got all the onions still in there like that, but I want to give it a taste to make sure that it's salty enough. I will say it's not quite salty enough. So I'm going to add some salt to this. I think it'll take about that much. Remember, this is part of the seasoning now for the torta. So make sure that that salt dissolves evenly in there. And then spoon a couple of tablespoons with the slow-cooked onion all over the meat. This is the magic of this. And it'll soak right down into the bread as well. I think I've got enough here that I can put just a touch more on there. Our next thing will be a little bit of the pickled onions to go over the top of it. And then this last ingredient, this last condiment, is the classic habanero salsa. So you have several different ways that you could go. Now, pickled red onions, I have taught you how to make on this channel, but also I've taught you how to make a homemade habanero hot sauce. So you could do the homemade one, or you can go to your Mexican grocery store and find the classic habanero hot sauces from El Yucateco or La Anita. There's a whole bunch of them out there. I think the habanero hot sauce from Yucateco is pretty classic and standard. Today, I'm going to use this hot sauce that I made, and I am going to just dribble it on here because this stuff is sort of like fire. So you want to be very careful how you put it on. In fact, people are always talking in the Yucatan Peninsula about putting on hot sauce, the habanero in whatever form it is, in droplets, okay? It's so incredibly flavorful. You don't need a lot of it, but it's also so hot, you can't use a whole lot of it. Okay, I'm just gonna cut this guy in half, and we'll see what we have, what it looks like here. Okay. And there you go. A beautiful and super classic torta of Cochinita Pibil. You're gonna love this.